This week, we're going to have a go at talking about significators, my favourite subject, as Bart will tell you. And we also have a tarot reading as well coming up for a lady who wants to know about how her training is going to go as an apprenticeship and everything else, and will she get a job at the end of it. So that's all. And Bart's going to be doing the reading for that one.
We have to get all that out of the 3-card reading. Ooh, they're going to have to be good cards, isn't it?
Well, yes, it's going to change. What's your take on significators, Bart?
I don't use them that often myself. Significators, the official version is before you start the reading, you look for one card that represents the querent. And if you do certain spreads, you have certain spreads where you have to pull the cards, where you have to take out the significator and put it in the middle, for example. I'm not that fond of that system. It is taking a card out of your stack, which means there is one influence less. I find it a lot more significant to locate a card that could be a significator.
Yeah.
Without actually choosing it before you start taking it out.
Yeah. And a significator, it doesn't have to be a person. It can be a situation or some other thing that's going on.
Actually, every card is a significator of something, isn't it?
Every card's a significator. It means something. It's just not what that person's interested in. That's the thing.
They might not know about it yet.
Yeah. I mean, the tarot community is a bit obsessed with significators, which has kind of passed me by. So I thought this week we'd talk about it a bit more. And I've been doing some research, which is really interesting. And we have to end up going back to a guy, it's a Swiss guy, it's all about, who's one of the founders of Semiotics, actually, the meaning of symbols and things. And it's almost like...
Semiotics is the science of meaning of symbols.
Yes.
Thank you.
And tarot is supposed to be all about symbols. But the problem is that the symbols you see on a tarot card are a lot to do with the meaning of the creator of that deck, or the artist who did it. Sometimes the artists realise they know more than the creator, and they come up with their own things anyway. So it tells you a lot about the people who made the deck, and not necessarily, but not anything about the person having a reading, because they never knew about that person. I mean, if it's a Rider-Waite deck or Book of Thoth deck, I mean, none of the people we have readings for have ever were never alive when the decks were created.
Plus, the meaning of symbols also changes through the ages. If you look at the swastika, if you would have an Indian tarot deck and a German tarot deck, yeah, I think the swastika would mean something completely different.
Yeah. So it's. I mean, this is part of the problem, And if you're focusing on what this symbol means on this card, you're not actually looking at what is going on in that person's life. And why that card is representing an aspect of that person's life. That's what's important. And, so, I mean, if you have it like a Celtic cross spread, then, the cards are individual on their own, 10 cards. And one of the ways you can sort of find more meaning is whether they're reversed or not, is this sort of thing. But again, it's not an adequate system as far as I'm concerned. I think also the point about having fewer cards is there's less cards to read. Yes, there's less cards to read, but there's also less to go on as well. I know.
Other ones out there. How often do you hear about people who take the Tower and Death out of their?
Yeah, as if these things don't exist. I mean, that's your issue. You see, a tarot readers who do that, that's their own issues, and they probably get people who have those issues as well. But if someone comes for reading that, it's someone close to them has died recently, and you don't have the death card in the pack. I mean, how was it supposed to?
Plus, fear is not the right thing to determine your behavior upon.
No.
If you let your behavior be determined by fear, you're not going to do much in life.
No, exactly. You were scared to do things, and and it's a big problem. So I've done a little presentation today about significators, and so we'll run through them and see what you think. So share screen.
You've done that especially for me, Paul. You shouldn't.
Yes, there we go. So here we are, significators. It's a search for meaning.
Significance.
Yes. So the definition of significator is specific to fortune telling, basically. Is one who or that which signifies. In astrology, it's a planet that's supposed to rule something. So this, for love, you look at where any planets in Libra would be, or Venus would be the thing to look for in that case. And we've got a quote there in this diagram. There's one significator of the horoscope, which pressed remarkably upon our astrologer's attention. In cartomancy, tarot, it's a card representing a querent question or situation. I mean, that kind of thing. I mean, it is strange that why tarot readers want to take the card out of the rest of the deck. I mean, as if you can't remember or write down that we're supposed to be looking at the Queen of Cups or the Queen of Swords. Why do you need it there to look at? So, so that's a significator, one who signifies. And this is a great quote. A significator is a card that is consciously chosen to represent the questioner or a question or a person they're asking about. Some spreads may require a significator, but often they're optional. I think a lot of tarot readers just go for a significator anyway. And this is from the Tarot Lady. And sometimes, I mean, it's funny because we've been doing readings, sometimes people will tell you that there's a particular card that always comes up for them. So this is another way that these things, but I mean, also by doing that, you're actually doing an aspect of yourself. It's not the whole you, it's just one part. So we can determine, there's different ways to determine these significators. You can do it by age. I think, sort of a younger or an older person, but I would tend to, if I was going by something like that, I'd be saying, well, is that person older or younger than the person? So, if the woman's 50, then a younger person can be 40. It doesn't have to mean a teenager or something like that.
Relatively.
Yes. And gender. Male, female, other. In Brighton, there's a lot of other.
Well, we have other tarot cards as well.
Yeah. And you can also go by the sun sign. I mean, it's a little bit of a problem with the sun sign because if you go with the court cards, they're not actually specifically about the sun sign zodiac anyway, but they're pressed into service. Or we can do things by appearance. If you're fair or blonde, then you're probably a cup. If you're dark, then it's probably going to be the swords. Or you can go by a situation as well. I mean, there's good and bad points with all of these ones, isn't there? It's hardly it's a kind of thing that you go by, and people have various ways of dealing with this. I mean, to me, none of them are particularly. I mean, sometimes if they crop up, then that person says, "Oh, well, that always represents my boyfriend." That card. Well, then fair enough. You can go by these things, but the thing is, with the court cards, all 16 actually represent aspects of yourself. They're none of them are not.
So the whole point is actually just to choose a symbol representing the querent.
Yeah, and you could use a major card, possibly a minor card as well. It just depends, doesn't it?
And I have a question.
Yes.
So if you read the book of Thoth, you could choose a significator amongst either the major arcana with the zodiac signs. Yeah. You can take a court card, also astrologically, or you can take a small card. Yeah. So when you do a opening of the key spread, could you consider all three of them significators?
Yeah, I mean, because very often in a reading, the subjects, the topics change in a reading. We start talking about love and it swings to work, or how's my mom doing, or something like that. And it's a matter of finding cards that are appropriate to what that might represent. And I say cards because sometimes you get a group of cards that can cover something. And in particular, when you span out the cards, there are groups of cards that you can see, and a court card in amongst those cards might be a person that represents the totality of what that group of cards are, which is a much more powerful way and a simpler way than having a card on its own. It needs to be in a relationship, because if there isn't a relationship, it's not going to make sense. Right.
But I remember when in the beginning I read cards. I did that too. You have, for example, one where you take the significator, put it in the middle, then you put a card left on top, right, bottom, and they all represent what you have under control, future, past. So it is an easy way of putting the significator central in the reading.
Yes, but that kind of means all the cards around it are equal in importance.
Yes.
You can't tell where the bias or is leaning or anything else, you see.
No.
And that's why people use the reverse cards as a sort of a blunt method to doing things. Mm-hmm. So I was studying with my colleague the other day about magic and things, and this particular thing came up, theory of the sign. And he said, oh, that's all to do with Saussure. And so it kind of got me interested, so I looked it up. And Ferdinand de Saussure is a Swiss professor of linguistics, and he's basically he sort of created semiotics. And the point about the theory of the sign is that there's two aspects, and they're paired up: the signifier and the signified. So we have the signifier, but we don't have the signified. It's kind of implicit in. Well, it's not, is it?
Well, I have, in a former life, I have studied communication management. And there, the first thing you learn in communication is when you are communicating, there is the sender, the message, and the receiver.
Yes.
Could this be compared to this here, the signifier and the signified?
Yeah. It's the whole sort of package. I mean, the whole thing about Significator is supposed to make it easy for you to do the readings, but people have endless problems with it. And hopefully we're going through this, we're going to have a better picture of what it is. Because if you remember Significator, if you Google Significator, the definition, it just comes up in relationship to astrology or tarot. It's not in anywhere else.
It's this is the only environment this word is used in.
Yeah, and it's a bit like symbols in tarot. They don't exist outside of tarot as such. If you go to dream websites and things, with symbols, with all these things, there's almost hardly any tarot in there, because tarot isn't really. We think tarot represents these kind of things, but it doesn't. So if you really want to understand what's going on, you have to go to a dream website and you have to turn it into your own kind of experience, rather than just using the cookbook kind of things there. But it's an indication of where you might be on these things. So the point about this is there's a signifier and the signified. There's two sides to this. It's a bit like the tarot we talked about before as being dual. The tarot is a dual system from Eliphas Levi. It's not a singular thing. It's always a dual aspect to things. So he says that meaning is created inside language, in the relations of difference between its parts. So the difference between its parts in the tarot reading is going to be the cards and where they are in relationship to each other, basically. So he has this two-part model, and he's called a dyadic of the sign. And he defines a sign, there's two parts to a sign. One is the significator, the signifier. So you drilled into a tarot significator. The signifier is the form which the sign takes, and the signified is the concept it represents. So we're trying to make, in the case of a significator, we're trying to make that card represent that person. I mean, the obvious problem is there's might be my fantasy as to who I might be, and there's what the tarot reader thinks I might be, and there's what my mum would think, and partner, and the doctor, and everyone else. Everyone's going to have a different idea of what that significator might be, and of course we act differently according to who we're with and what we're doing with someone, don't we? So it's never, you know, we just, it's like people having the telephone voice. You know, that's just for the phone. That's not for real life. And that's the problem. See how many forms for each card. You know, we're back into archetypes. There's a million different forms for the Empress and the Emperor and all these other cards as well. We can all recognize those cards as representing the Chariot or other these things, but how you depict
how you fill it in. How do you fill in the concept? Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. And how many concepts for each card? It's a bit like divinatory. We're back onto divinatory meanings then as well, aren't we? But I mean, if you'd simplify it down, so it's the form the sign takes, and the form would be the tarot card that we think represents because it looks like it on the picture, or astrology, or some other way. And the signified is the concept that it represents. So, for an example, the signifier would be the word open. But it's open compared to closed or things. In one sense, you could say, well, the shop is open for business. You know, the door is open. I am open to you. There's lots and lots of meanings of the word open. I mean, open doesn't mean anything until you add it to something else. And you have to have both. And you can't have meaningless on either side, the signifier or the signified. There's got to be something, there has to be something connecting with them. So they have a thing called the value of the sign. And he refers to it, depends on its relationships with other signs within the system. You know, we've been talking about, you know, why would you take out a card from the system? Because you're taking it out of the system. And he's saying the sign has no absolute value independent of this context, you see, which is a probably better way. I mean, this is a professor and he's invented his own system of branch of philosophy and things. So he knows more than we do on this subject. And there's nothing reason, you know, why shouldn't tarot embody these things from other systems? It's going to make us a better person, better reader as well. An example of values he gives is that, and he talks about signification, what is signified. For a chessboard, each piece, the value of it depends on its position on the chessboard in a game and whether it's attacking or defending or being attacked and all these sort of things as well. So it's the value is the relationships. And if you take the card out of that system, it has no value and it has no relationship. What do you think on this, Bart?
Yeah, I agree totally. Yeah, it is true. I mean, just like a letter on itself means nothing until with other letters it can form a word.
Yeah, but really you need a sentence or a paragraph, don't you?
And like with the analogy with chess pieces, yes, because one may, if you say horse,
yeah.
You could say horse, people will think of horse riding and cowboys.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, if you put the horse next to a tower, it turns into a chess piece.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the thing about context. You need a way of relating things to each other, not by meaning.
It's a sort of consensus.
Yeah. So, you know, this is the point here. It's saying the significator is the pointing finger, the word, the sound image. The word is simply a jumble of letters. The pointing finger is not the star. It's the interpretation of the signifier that meaning.
You know what this reminds me of?
What's that?
This famous painting of René Magritte with a pipe on it saying, "Ceci n'est pas une pipe."
This is not a pipe.
This is not a pipe. This is the significator, the signifier of a pipe.
Yes. It's a koan, isn't it? It's a Zen kind of thing that's going on. So the signified is the concept, the meaning, the thing indicated by the signifier. It doesn't have to be a real object, but is some reference to which the signifier refers. The thing signified is created in the perceiver and is internal to it. So this is the thing. You know, how I see myself is related to something internally that I'm responding to other people's view of me. And as we all know, how we see ourselves isn't how everyone else sees us, which can be better or worse. But, you know, it's being the self-aware thing, isn't it? So you know, we can have different roles in life and act differently according to who we're with and what we're doing.
So some signifiers are better than others.
Yes. So this is the other thing about this is that the signified stable, the signified varies between people and context. This is the problem. You can't nail it down as to how this card represents someone else. You see, I mean, people sort of trying to find this, you know, one true picture of the meanings of the cards. And this is the problem with meanings, because it needs in relationship to things. It's not in relationship to that card. It is to the ensemble that goes with it. It's like an orchestra. The individual pieces create the sound.
May I, but for example, certain zodiac signs have certain characteristics in which they distinguish each other, in which they distinguish themselves from the others.
Yes.
So for example, let's say Frank is a Scorpio.
Yes.
And they say about Scorpios that they are, how do you say? They are always up for it.
Right.
So if Frank wants to choose a significator, and Frank recognizes himself in this characteristic,
yes,
he said, yes, I am more ready to go than the average other person. So I recognize myself in this characteristic as distinguishing myself from the others.
Yep.
Therefore, you understand what I mean? Of course, we all have a bit of everything in us, but we have a bit more of certain things and a bit less of other things.
Or we like to think so, you know. But also, you know, but people don't necessarily like being labelled in other contexts, do they?
No, but you have to label in order to find order.
Yes, yes. You know,
if you don't want to label, then you live in chaos.
Yeah. Things, you know, it's you know, it's in the Bible. You know, God gave names to things.
As the Crowley said that thing. Crowley said that the value of gossiping, of judging people.
Yeah.
What was it again? He said, so it is generally considered as a bad thing to be gossiping and judgmental towards people.
Yes.
But nevertheless, it develops a quality that is important in order to do divination. It helps you to predict the behavior of people based on external factors. And
but we also have to, you know, it's a bit like not going down a dark alley at night on your own.
Even though it might be
you have to be streetwise.
Yeah.
That's not being judgmental. It's just you've got to learn to know how to look after yourself in situations.
And anticipate.
Anticipate,
know what's coming. Judgmental. If somebody says he looks iffy and you ignore it and you get mugged afterwards,
yep,
because you didn't want to be judgmental.
You didn't judge the but that's reading the signs rather than being a judgmental thing, isn't it? I think because you know, judgmental strays into prejudice. That's the thing about it all. So this is the thing. The signified is stable. The signifier views thoughts and images. So there's always this kind of thing to and fro going on between the two things. And you know, in tarot, we need the balance of the both, not just the obsession with the meaning and sort of stuff. Because you know, meaning depends on something or other. So one way of defining relationships is to use elemental dignities. You know, between the four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. Fire and water clash, air and earth clash. Fire and air are active elements. Earth and water are passive elements. And with these dualities and modalities, you can work out subtle levels of interactions that go on between the cards. So this is where you get the meaning from. It's the relationship of the cards, what are they next to? And also with the elemental aspects as well, how they strengthen or weaken each other. And there's always a two-way thing between them. It's not one way.
I had a sort of little two Lego blocks just clicked in their place concerning what you just said, and the rose cross. When we looked at the rose cross, the side of the princes and the princesses, they both had the alchemical symbol of Mercury in the middle.
Right.
And now I just realized that when you look at the properties of the elemental dignities, both the princes and princesses are supposed to be very dynamic. compared to the king and the king and the queen.
Mm.
So this explains, now I understand why the two arms representing air and earth both have Mercury in the middle, the little Mercury symbol.
Right.
Because they are young.
That's Mercurius rather. It's not Mercury, it's Mercurius.
Yeah,
It's
more
the
pure.
duality, and it's the catecheios basically that's going on there, and that's unifying of opposites. In all of these things with duality, you're always unifying opposites. It's solve coagula. So it's the part of the great work is to, it's integrating the male and female aspects of us and all these sort of things as well. So what's the goal?
Predicting the future.
Yeah, that's a good one. So there's a unit of opposites, and what you end up with is no difference between the signifier and the signified. They're fully integrated together. You can't separate them out. And in Taoism, it's the interactive processing.
This is all a lie, Paul.
Sorry?
This is all a lie. Remember the book of lies. Everything you say is a lie.
Yeah, because you've got to integrate the truth and the lies. It's not, people get angry, oh, he's not telling the truth. Everybody lies, but it's actually dealing with things as well.
The truth is unsayable.
Yeah, and the truth, saying the truth, that lies are implicit in saying the truth, aren't they? Because
the word truth is a lie.
Yeah, yeah. It's all a bit of a complicated sort of thing and stuff that's going on there.
I thought of this because he said no difference between the signifier and the signified.
No, they both essentially become, there's a union that sort of goes on between the two things.
Their meaning, their mutual thing, but they are two different things, but the meaning is the mutual thing.
I mean, in part of a reading, it's you need that kind of flow of energy between you and the client as well. There's an interchange that's going on all the time. A client that sits there saying nothing, not giving anything away. Then why are they there? Because you need that dialogue and energy flow to make things happen, and to bring clarity as well, actually, because sometimes when a client is uncertain about things, and you need to talk to them to find out what that uncertainty is, to bring clarity as to where to go with the reading. Because sometimes the questions they're asking aren't good questions. You need to answer, they're sometimes a bit black and white, or they're asking a question that doesn't really go anywhere. You need to reframe those questions into ways that's going to help them and bring clarity to your reading as well. Because otherwise,
and also sometimes you have people who have like a wall around them. They have a poker face, and you have also the skeptical ones.
Yeah.
The ones who they shuffle the card, poof.
Yeah.
It makes you think they can't be really bothered in their future. Then they can't be bothered to shuffle more than 3 times.
So there we are. So that's my view on signifiers. Yours is pretty similar as well, isn't it, Bart?
Excuse me?
Your views on significators is pretty similar, isn't it?
Yes, I've already given this subject quite a bit of thought, not in this context, but because I have been studying communication and language.
And sometimes we're standing on giants, on the shoulders of giants, because it's semiotics is kind of, they sort of use that in tarot and things, but rather than the context, the way he's doing the signifier and the signified, the subject and object basically. And he's done the research and everything else, and there's a big body of research on top of all of this. This is more of by way of an introduction. Is this, and basically the whole thing is to be fluid about whether it is a signifier or signified, and they can flip round, and just through the sequences and everything else. It's not a fixed thing. You can move with things. And actually, sometimes people are entrenched and you want them to move out of their fixed position. I am a mother, therefore I can't do this. Or I am a mother, therefore I should do this.
And a signified can actually have multiple signifiers.
Yeah. I mean, I have significators in the reading, but I mean, it's what comes up. It's what I talk about, and for me, that's a significator. There's this group of cards about relationships. This group of cards is about work, this group of cards about family or something else. You know, there's sometimes they're very clearly delineated groups of cards, which, you know, is the ensemble brings out the signification rather than than individual cards themselves. So, you know, when you read, you don't do CAT. You know, you read cat.
No,
And you know, if I said cat, you say, yeah, what cat? What are we talking about? You know, it is.
Yeah, but this is experience as well, Paul. I have, yeah.
Yeah,
Me
some
as well,
people,
when
you
I
know,
have a reading, you can look at it, and in the blink of an eye,
Yeah.
without even having looked, which you can already feel the atmosphere, the vibe in the reading.
Yeah. And it's the subtle signs that you've got to pick up on rather than the big flashy sort of things more than anything else.
In the details, that's the important things, or the details are also important.
It's in the details.
The really relevant things come out of the details.
Yeah, and it's little things can suddenly can take on huge significance. It's very interesting. That's the power and energy of those subtle things. And that's the reason why you have to kind of get out of the book definition, if you like, of the cards and things, and to pick up on the subtleties of the energies, things that come to your mind, or even come into the mind of the client as well. When during the reading, they'll see something in the card that changes the dynamics of the reading as well.
It's these little things that gain the skeptic over.
Yeah. It's a subtlety.
The big story never does, but if you manage to give details, they go.
So you essentially have to forget the book meanings, which is why I keep on saying I'm rubbish at the meanings of the cards, because they're not important. It's the other things that you haven't quite, that are insignificant. That's where the power is.
And on when you study the cards as well, so you have the basic meaning. The first meaning, the emperor is the emperor is the institute, the law, the order. And so then you learn more and more meanings about the same card. But if you look at the end of the day, how many of all these meanings that you actually use now, every now and then, I do. Every now and then, there is something I learned that I actually managed to integrate usefully in a reading.
You shouldn't be crowbarring the meanings of the cards into a reading anyway.
No way.
No. I mean,
but sometimes you learn a new meaning that you can relate to.
Yes.
That you thought, I never looked at it that way, but like the...
And you might never again, but it worked at the time.
Exactly.
So I think it's time to do a tarot reading.
Mm-hmm.
We have someone who sent me a message, a lady.
Oh, excuse me, I wasn't... Are we finished with the significate?
Why, have you got something else to say?
Yes, my conclusions from my little homework.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Bart.
It's okay, Paul, it's okay. So, what I have found during a little bit of homework I did, which I found quite interesting, the first book I consulted was this one.
Yes.
In the back is a register. You look up Significator, and this is what I came up with. Now, before commencing the divination, one of the 16 court cards should be selected to represent the significator or inquirer, and should answer as nearly to his description. And now it comes. Wands, generally fair-haired and red-haired persons with fair complexion. Swords, moderately fair persons. Cups, moderately fair. Swords, dark. Pentacles, very dark. Kings, men. Queens, women. Princes, young men. Princesses, young women. This is the Golden Dawn approach.
Yeah.
This is how. Now, I thought, let's compare this to the Book of Thoth. And if you bear in mind what we just read in the Golden Dawn, Crowley says, choose a card to represent the querents using your knowledge or judgment of his character rather than dwelling on his physical characteristics. So when you read this,
he's ahead of his time, wasn't he?
The Golden Dawn.
Yeah, he's ahead of his time, wasn't he?
Yes, he is. So I found this, and indeed, when you read Crowley's description of the court cards, he gives a physical appearance, he gives a character, he gives quite a lot of information about the person on the court card. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I found this quite, how do you say, revolutionary of Crowley.
It's you've got to be fluid in how you look at the cards and the reading, and we all moderate our language and behavior depending on who we're with. You know, everyone does it. You know, when you meet the vicar, you try not to swear, you know, unless he swears first.
Yeah,
But,
and it's extra funny even.
So we have a reading to do, Bart. Have you
Yes,
got
we
your
do.
cards ready?
Check
Oh,
this
we've
out.
gone to the white.
Check this out.
Oh, there
This is
we go.
another Swiss box. This is the box. So this is, as you can see, the white box C model,
Yes. Yes.
but it is smaller, and it was the first box with the 3 magi.
Right.
So this is from 1986, I believe.
So have you taken the 2 magi out, have you?
No, they're still in. All the magi are in there.
We only
I'm
have
gonna
one
take them
magi.
out now to do the reading. Yes, it is complete. Check it out, check it out, check it out.
Yeah, well, they should be, shouldn't they?
Yeah, sometimes you can have a nice box, but the wrong cards inside. You wouldn't. There's quite a lot of those going around. So, enlighten me, Paul.
Okay. So this is from a lady. She says, "I'm unemployed at the moment. When will all the training and job applications I'm putting in reap rewards?"
So it's about work.
It's about work.
All right.
Okay. When's she going to get the mega job for all of her skills that she's been training and working with still?
Yeah.
Well, what card throw out? Throw on the floor. Which one? Oh, the Fool. Okay.
Yes.
So she's right. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Eh?
So maybe she's looking to avoiding spontaneity.
Oh, excuse me. I was reading. I will try not to drop any this time.
Right. Well, that's interesting. The Fool came out. She needs to be a bit more original in where she's going and what she's doing as well.
I think this should be good enough.
Right. What have we got?
Discs. Paul, oh, bloody hell. This is a tough one. I'm going to leave this one to you. Now, do you think I haven't shuffled enough?
I would think so.
I think I'll do it again. That's the thing, of course, when you're taking your package. This is what I'll do it my way. I'll spread them open and I'll pull them like that. Bloody hell, that sound obscene. So, my way then.
Right. Ace of Swords. Ace of Swords.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. Well, we have the Moon, we have the 7 of Discs, and the Princess of Swords. On the face of it, that's not a good picture, is it? But that may well be representing her state of mind at the moment. Thinking it's obsessing and worrying too much and thinking of failure. And
no fire, not doing anything.
Well, yes, but the Moon there is, this is letting the imagination run right. Maybe she needs to use her imagination more, would be a better way of looking at this. But I think also the Moon card represents Pisces, 21st of March to the 21st of February to 21st of March, isn't it?
So we're Pisces now.
We're in Pisces now. So this is her thinking that right this minute, it isn't going to happen for her. And with the Princess of Swords, she's just thinking and analysing too much. And just thinking, the 7 of this failure, lots of hard work and no reward. But, the studying and research and practice, it is worth it. But anyone who's in training doesn't earn the money. Most of the time, it's pretty crap wages, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So let's move on from those 3 cards and pick 3 more and sort of see how it goes.
I'll have a say first there. How would I see it?
Yeah. Sorry, Bart.
Paul. I would say, so the central card here, it does mean that for the moment, financially or at least materially, somehow, she's not doing too well, maybe because she doesn't have a job or anything. So the finances are not what they should be. And the Princess of Swords here, this is it's starting to get on her moods. You know, this is starting to get to her a bit, and just the material side of things are starting to get her a little bit depressed.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I would see from this.
But this is the, you know, saying, you know, what you said is right, but you've also got to think about the person who's receiving the reading. Yeah, you've got to, you know, it's pointing out that the way they're thinking isn't really helping them, isn't it?
Well, this is a warning not to get depressed.
Yeah, it is not to obsess and get focused on failure, which is basically what those cards are doing. So, you know, it's because the question is, you know, but it's almost within the question, will all the training and job applications I'm doing put again reap rewards? Well, the answer is yes. You don't need a tarot reading to do that. Yes, of course. If you're studying,
just shows that for the moment she's using a bit of courage. It didn't say anything about the outcome. It's only
it's more caught up in. It's wondering, is there any point in carrying on what she's doing? Yes, there is a point, because you've got to do those things in order to
carry on what she's doing. Where will everything lead?
Right.
Is there any point in? I asked this question.
There we go. So she needs. So the positive energy, you've got the Prince of Swords there, the Nine of Wands and the Eight of Wands. I mean, they're very positive, dynamic cards. They're everything the other ones weren't.
Yes, and they get along very nicely as well.
And, you know, so you've got communication, which is the Eight of Wands. The Nine of Wands is strength, things improving. And the Prince of Swords, this might be a man in her life or something who's intelligent, articulate, and passionate about things. He believes in what he's doing. She, you know, maybe she needs to listen to him or something like that. But she definitely needs some outside kind of thing to jiggle her along, you know, to sort of get that keep going kind of thing.
Because there is also, I think in the Prince of Swords, there is also a warning not to spend too much time thinking, letting your thoughts go around. It's urging you to get into action. And
do
thinking,
things.
start doing.
Do things. Thinking just creates more thoughts.
Things should be going very quickly here.
Yeah.
Yes. So, do you have anything else to say about this?
No, I think they're there, aren't they? You know, the first three cards represented her state of mind.
Yes, I agree with that.
And the second set as well. If you, I was going to say snap out of it, which is not a good thing to say. Snap out of it. You know, it's not a good thing to say to someone. But she can change her views and be more optimistic and positive about the outcome.
This is still a bit represented in this one, the Prince of Swords.
Yeah.
This is also a bit the state of mind of having your thoughts all over the place and worrying a lot, but not doing anything about it.
She needs to be positive and do stuff.
Yes, exactly. Thinking will get you nowhere. You have to get up and do things.